Hi, in this video I want to talk about declension of the first declension nouns in Greek. So let's go over that. I'm going to use orange today. So we're going to talk about Greek declension, first declension nouns, and so these are actually, if you know any Latin, they're going to be related in some of their forms to first declension nouns in Latin, so they'll look and seem a lot the same. I'm going to be using mostly Wikipedia tables. I like that they give multiple examples, and then you can go and look up the exact same table later if you want. Apparently Wikipedia, licensing wise, really doesn't mind people using their material, so I'm going to use that, and then you'll be totally familiar with the tables when you see them in a different context. So the first group, there are going to be three groups I'm going to go over, are going to be ones with a long vowel ending. And so they'll either have a long alpha or they'll have this long eta right here. And so we'll go over different forms of that. So we've got kora, which means land or country. We've got tea, which is goddess. Oikia, which is house. And then pona, which is like voice. Also here we'll have singular, oh goodness gracious, and plural. Singular and plural. Sorry about that original S there. Singular and a lot of these S's and singular and plural. So we've got a couple of things to notice here before we head off. We've got nominative, accusative, genitive, dative. The nominative and vocative for this group, for essentially all feminine nouns, because all these are feminine, in the first declension are going to be the same, regardless of whether it's singular or plural or whatever. So that's something to keep in mind. There are going to be some masculine nouns in the first declension, but the overwhelming majority are going to be feminine, actually. So you're going to see a lot of feminine nouns in the first declension. So whenever they're feminine, the nominative and vocative is going to be exactly the same. So our endings are this alpha, alpha nu, alpha sigma, and this is long, but it just should be remembered that whenever you have a iota subscript, you've got this, you'll know that the vowel is long. So long alpha iota subscript. So kora, koran, koras, kora. And you'll see in the third declension, you'll see the sigma crop up in the genitive again. And in the second declension, you'll also see this noon again. And so, and you'll always in the datives have either a iota or a iota subscript. So those are some things to keep in mind. In the plural, you have korai, koras, koron, and korais. So a couple of things to note here. This ending here is actually short, even though it's a diphthong. This is an exception. Normally, the alpha iota as a diphthong is going to be long, but at the end of word, it's almost always short. There's an exception to the exception, but just remember alpha iota at the end of word, short for now. And so because of that, we're going to get this this accent on this long vowel, and that's a result of the rules of accentuation. So if you understand that this is short and you understand the rules of accentuation, that'll make sense. The only other thing here that is really important to notice, besides just things you have to memorize, is that the accent here shifts. It would normally be right here, but it shifts instead to the last syllable and is circumflex for the genitive plural. And that will be true of all genitive plurals of the first declension. Now, the reason why we have this one right here is because we want to show this thea, or tea, I'll usually say tea, is because we want to show what happens when you have the last syllable accented in a word with these long alpha endings. And what essentially happens is we'll get this acute accent for the nominative, vocative, and accusative, and then for the genitive and data we'll have a circumflex accent. So that's just a quirky thing you're going to need to remember about this declension. As far as all that goes, nothing really is added by looking at this one. It should be remembered, though, however, that we're going to get the alpha instead of this eta whenever the ending of the noun follows an iota, an epsilon, or a rho. So if you ever see a iota, epsilon, or rho in the first declension as the last thing before the declension ending, you can always essentially know it's going to be an alpha instead of an eta. So this eta declension will be whenever there isn't a iota, an epsilon, or a rho as the last part of the stem before the ending, and it's going to be a lot like how oikia and tea are declined. So here it's going to be more like tea because it's accented on the last syllable here. And so we have pona, ponan, ponas, ponai, and then ponai, ponas, and that's long, by the way. It's just they didn't write the long vowel because it's kind of difficult to type when you have the acute accent on it as well. Ponon and ponais, so exactly like tea, except that only in the singular, and this is important, only in the singular are we going to get these etas instead of the alphas. So those are for long vowel endings. And by the way, a lot of Greek is going to involve some memorization. So I'll tell you some interesting things here, but it's going to be well worth your time to memorize this. It's not going to take you as long as you think it will. And once it's memorized, it's going to help you so much in reading comprehension. Some people just delay with their memorization of these declensions. Don't do that. Just memorize it. And it's worth it. So after this video, we just go through and memorize all of these declensions. So here we have our short vowel endings. Let me see, where am I? Oh, there we go. So here we've got alatea, which means truth, and glossa, which in Attic Greek will probably, these two double sigmas will be taus, so glotta. But other than that, it'll be exactly the same. And so we've got essentially two types. We've got the alpha type, which comes after iota, and then we've got our eta type, which doesn't have a iota, but because there's no short eta, we use an alpha where the vowel would be short. So that's sort of how that works. And so the way this works is in the nominative, vocative, and accusative, we have a short alpha where we would have had a long alpha. Otherwise, everything is exactly the same as the long alpha declension. And then in the eta declension, we have a short alpha where we would have had an eta. And then everything else is exactly like an eta declension. So exactly like pona. You will notice here that the accent is not on the last syllable. For this one, we only had an example of a word where the accent was on the last syllable for the eta declension in the last one, whereas for the alpha one, we had examples of multiple accentuations. Just note that the accentuation can be, we can accentuate things like we did with kora with the eta declension as well. So it's not really a subtype, it's just the accent happens to be on a different word. So this really shouldn't be, if you memorize the other ones first, these ones should be very easy. Just remember in the nominative, vocative, and accusative, where we had the long alpha in the ending, we will now have the long alpha or the eta in the ending, we will now have a short alpha. And that brings us to our last group, which is the masculine. And so this is interesting because this will actually have a distinct vocative case, and that's kind of cool. So you'll notice here there's a sigma in the nominative that wasn't there before. So that's a difference between this and the other declensions, and that sigma will just be dropped in the vocative singular. Now, in some vocative singulars, you'll actually have a different vocative form. So, for example, poetas, poet, we're actually going to have poeta, so a short alpha, and here we'll have a generally a long alpha. And the key to remembering this is that there are just some irregular vocatives in the masculine. So you'll just have to memorize some. In general, though, you'll just drop this sigma. Other than that, the only difference between the masculine declension and the other declensions is that in the genitive we have, instead of neanias, because that would look exactly like that, and it's okay, sometimes things can look exactly the same, because for example we have this, but where we can avoid it, we'll avoid it. We have neaniu, and this is actually, when we learn the second declension, you'll learn that that's actually a second declension form, and the second declension has a lot of masculine nouns, so that would make a lot of sense. So the difference is a vocative exists, the nominative has a sigma at the end, and the vocative is usually just a dropping of the sigma. And the genitive has u. So that will be the difference. And here's where I got those tables from. So feel free to browse there.